My name is Caroline Webb. I'm 38 years old, and I learnt something important about silence 3 years ago. The kind of silence that comes after someone tells you to pack your things. The kind that follows when you're sitting in a lawyer's office, signing papers you never imagined you'd need. The kind that fills a house when the person you built a life with decides that life no longer includes you. I stood in the driveway of what used to be our home on a cold Tuesday in March, watching movers carry boxes I'd packed myself. My hands were steady, my breathing was controlled. I'd already cried in private, in the shower where no one could hear, and I'd decided that was enough. Daniel, my ex-husband, stood on the porch with his arms crossed, watching me like a landlord overseeing an eviction. He didn't offer to help. He didn't apologize. He just waited for me to leave. Beside him stood Vanessa, 29, auburn hair perfectly styled, wearing yoga pants that cost more than my monthly car payment. She didn't look at me directly. She looked past me, through me, the way you look at furniture being removed from a room you're about to redecorate. I could feel her impatience radiating across the lawn. "You'll be out by 5, right?" Daniel called out. His voice was flat, administrative, like I was a service provider who'd overstayed their appointment. "That's the plan," I said. I didn't elaborate. I didn't argue. I carried a lamp to my car and placed it carefully in the back seat. Vanessa whispered something to Daniel. He nodded. Then she stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the wooden porch. "Just so we're clear," she said, voice bright and casual. "This house is ours now. You don't need to come back for anything. If you forgot something, we'll donate it." I stopped. I didn't turn around immediately. I adjusted the lamp, making sure it wouldn't tip during the drive. Then I straightened up and looked at her. "Understood," I said. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that said she'd won something. Daniel looked uncomfortable for half a second, but he didn't correct her. He didn't say anything at all. I got in my car and drove away. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. I already knew exactly what was about to happen. What Vanessa didn't know, what Daniel had conveniently forgotten to mention, was that my name was still on the mortgage. Not just as a co-signer, as the primary borrower. The house was mine before it was ours. I bought it 7 years ago, 2 years before Daniel and I got married. I was 31, working as a senior project coordinator for a commercial construction firm. The pay was solid. I'd saved aggressively. When I found the 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood 15 minutes from downtown, I made an offer the same day. The mortgage was approved under my name alone. My credit score was excellent. My employment history was stable. Daniel wasn't on the loan because, at the time, he was still freelancing as a graphic designer with inconsistent income. It wasn't a judgment, it was just practical. The bank approved me. They didn't approve us. When we got married a year later, we talked about refinancing to add his name. But refinancing meant fees, paperwork, and a potential rate increase. We were comfortable. I was paying the mortgage from our joint account, which we both contributed to. It felt like a shared responsibility, even if the paperwork said otherwise. I assumed, like so many people do, that marriage meant automatic co-ownership. I was wrong. In our state, mortgage obligations don't transfer through marriage unless you explicitly refinance or quitclaim. I learned this much later, sitting across from a family law attorney named Margaret Cho, who explained it to me in a quiet, matter-of-fact tone. "Caroline," she said, looking over my documents, "you're the sole borrower. That means you're solely responsible for the debt, but it also means you have sole legal claim to the mortgage interest. If Daniel wants to stay in the house after the divorce, he'll need to refinance in his own name and buy you out, or you can force a sale." I sat very still. "What if I don't want to force a sale?" Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Then you keep paying the mortgage and maintain your claim to the property. But he'd be living there rent-free unless you draft a formal rental agreement." "What if I stop paying?" "Then the house goes into foreclosure and your credit gets destroyed along with it. But his doesn't, because he's not on the loan." I nodded slowly. So I'm trapped. Not trapped, Margaret said. Leverage. I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. The divorce was quick and cold. Daniel had already moved on emotionally long before he filed the paperwork. I found out about Vanessa 3 weeks before he asked for the separation. I didn't find out through a confession. I found out because his calendar notifications were still synced to the kitchen tablet, and I saw dinner with V appear 4 times in 2 weeks. When I asked him directly, he didn't lie. He just shrugged. We're not happy anymore, he said. You know that. I didn't know that. Or maybe I did, and I'd been pretending otherwise. Either way, it didn't matter. He wanted out. Vanessa wanted in, and I was expected to exit gracefully. The divorce settlement was mediated, not litigated. That meant we sat in a beige conference room with a neutral third party and divided our lives into spreadsheets. Daniel wanted the house. He said it made sense because he worked from home now, and I'd be moving into a smaller apartment anyway. You don't need 3 bedrooms, he said, as if that was a valid legal argument. Margaret countered immediately. The house is in Caroline's name. If Daniel wants to keep it, he needs to buy her out at current market value or refinance the mortgage into his name. Daniel's lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone, leaned forward. My client is willing to take over the mortgage payments. That's not the same as assuming the loan, Margaret said. Caroline remains liable. If he stops paying, her credit is destroyed. She needs to be removed from the mortgage entirely. Daniel sighed. The way you sigh when someone is being unnecessarily difficult. I can't refinance right now. My income isn't stable enough. Then we force a sale, Margaret said. That's not fair, Daniel snapped. I've lived there for 6 years. You've lived there, Margaret agreed, but you don't own it. The mediator suggested a temporary arrangement. Daniel would stay in the house and make the mortgage payments while he worked on building his credit and income documentation for a refinance. I would retain ownership and liability. We'd revisit in 6 months. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because Margaret told me it was the fastest path to finalizing the divorce. Let him try, she said. Most people in his position don't follow through. When he doesn't refinance, you'll have more leverage. I signed the agreement, Daniel signed the agreement, and I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town, where the carpet was thin and the neighbors were loud. For the first 3 months, Daniel made the payments. I tracked them obsessively through the mortgage service's website. On the 3rd of every month, a payment would post $2,340. Exactly on time. I told myself this was fine. He was holding up his end. Eventually, he'd refinance, and I'd be free. I could move on. Then Vanessa moved in. I found out through social media. The way you find out most things about exes you've muted, but not blocked. A mutual friend liked one of Vanessa's posts. The algorithm served it to me on a Thursday evening while I was eating leftover stir-fry on my couch. The photo showed Vanessa standing in my kitchen. My kitchen! The one with the farmhouse sink I'd spent weeks researching. She was holding a glass of wine, smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Finally home." I stared at the screen. Not because it hurt, because it clarified something. She thought she lived there. Daniel had let her believe she lived there, but neither of them actually owned it. I opened my banking app and checked the mortgage account. The payment for October had posted. November was coming up. I decided to wait. November 3rd came and went. No payment. November 10th. Still nothing. By November 15th, I received an email from the mortgage servicer. Payment past due. Late fee assessed. I called Daniel. He didn't answer. I texted. No response. I called Margaret. He stopped paying, I said. Expected, she said. Do you want to cure the payment and protect your credit? What happens if I don't? Foreclosure proceedings begin after 90 days of non-payment. Your credit score drops significantly. The house could be sold at auction. You'd lose everything. And if I do pay, then you're paying his mortgage while he lives there rent-free with his girlfriend. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot, staring at the dashboard. The heater was blowing warm air that smelled faintly of dust. I thought about the lamp I'd carried out of that house, the boxes I'd packed. The quiet way Vanessa had smiled at me. "I'll pay it," I said. "Caroline, I'll pay it, and I want you to draft a formal notice. He's now a tenant, and if he doesn't start paying rent, I'm going to evict him." Margaret was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Now you're thinking like a landlord. I paid the November mortgage out of my savings. It hurt. It hurt badly, but I did it anyway." Then Margaret drafted a letter. ***. To Daniel Webb. Re-notice of rental obligation. ***. Dear Mr. Webb, as of November 1st, you are currently residing in the property located at 428 Maple Ridge Drive without making the agreed-upon mortgage payment. Per our divorce settlement, you were to assume responsibility for said payments while pursuing refinancing. ***. Since you have failed to make the November payment, you are now considered a tenant at will. Effective immediately, monthly rent is due in the amount of $2,800, payable to Caroline Webb by the 1st of each month. Failure to pay rent will result in formal eviction proceedings under state landlord-tenant law. ***. You have 30 days from receipt of this letter to either 1. Refinance the mortgage and remove Caroline Webb from liability, or 2. Vacate the property. ***. This is not a negotiation. The letter was sent via certified mail. Daniel signed for it on December 2nd. He called me 10 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. "Caroline, what the hell is this? You can't just charge me rent. We had an agreement. Call me back." I didn't call him back. He called again. And again. I blocked his number. Then Vanessa called. I didn't know how she got my number. I answered because I was curious. "Caroline?" Her voice was sharp, clipped. "This is Vanessa. We need to talk." "About what?" "About this insane letter you sent. You can't evict us. This is Daniel's house." "Actually," I said, keeping my voice light, conversational. "It's my house. My name is on the mortgage. Daniel's is not. If he wants to stay, he needs to pay rent. Or buy me out. Or refinance. Those are his options. That's not how divorce works. That's exactly how mortgages work. You're being vindictive. I'm being a landlord." There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. "You know what? Fine. We'll pay your stupid rent. But you're pathetic." She hung up. I sat very still in my quiet apartment. Then I smiled. December came. No rent payment arrived. By December 10th, I sent a follow-up notice. By December 20th, I filed for eviction. The process was slower than I expected. The courts were backlogged. The holidays delayed everything. But by mid-January, a hearing date was set. Daniel showed up to court without a lawyer. Vanessa came with him, sitting in the back row, arms crossed. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Margaret beside me. The judge was a woman in her 50s with steel-grey hair and no patience for nonsense. She reviewed the case file, looked at Daniel, and said, "Mr. Webb, do you dispute that you're living in a property owned by the plaintiff?" "It's my house," Daniel said. "I've lived there for years." "Is your name on the mortgage?" "No, but..." "Is your name on the title?" "We're divorced. The house should be mine." "That's not how property law works." "Did you refinance?" "I couldn't." "Did you make the mortgage payments as agreed?" Daniel hesitated. "I missed a couple months." "So you failed to refinance, failed to buy her out, and failed to make payments. What exactly is your argument for possession?" "She's just trying to punish me." The judge looked at me. "Miss Webb, do you wish to continue with the eviction?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're current on the mortgage?" "I am." She signed the order. "Mr. Webb, you have 30 days to vacate. If you remain after that, law enforcement will assist in removal." Daniel stood frozen. Vanessa made a strangled sound from the back row. "You can't do this!" Daniel said. I just did, the judge replied. They didn't leave quietly. For the first 2 weeks, I received emails. Long, furious emails from Vanessa, accusing me of being bitter, cruel, and small. She said I was destroying Daniel's life because I couldn't handle the fact that he'd moved on. I didn't respond. Daniel tried a different approach. He sent a single text from a new number. *, Caroline, please, we can figure this out. I just need more time. *. I replied once. You had 7 months. On day 28, I drove past the house. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just kept driving. On day 31, I received confirmation from my lawyer. The property was vacant. I drove back that evening. The house was empty, silent. The air inside smelled stale. They'd left the place clean. I'll give them that. No damage, no trash, just absence. I walked through each room slowly. The bedroom where we'd slept. The kitchen where Vanessa had posed with her wine glass. The living room where Daniel used to work on his laptop. His back to me, always his back to me. I stood in the center of the house and felt nothing. Not sadness, not victory. Just a quiet, settled certainty. I sold the house 4 months later. The market was strong. I walked away with a significant profit after paying off the remaining mortgage balance. I used the money to buy a smaller place, a condo with a balcony that faces east, where I drink my coffee in the mornings and watch the sun come up. It's quiet here, peaceful. Daniel sent one final message after the sale closed. I don't know how he found out. But he did. *. You really did it. You took everything. *. I read it once. Then I deleted it. I didn't take everything. I just stopped giving it away. If you've ever been told that something was no longer yours, even though your name was still on every document that mattered, you know the feeling. It's not about revenge. It's about finally realizing that silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. And sometimes, the person who underestimated you the most is the one who taught you exactly how patient you could be.